One of the hottest comic books in recent history is going to come out later this month, and there are so many things to talk about with regards to it. In this video, we're talking Berserker. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehos. And in this video, I'm going to talk about Boom Studios' newest comic book that comes out later this month called Berserker. Now, for those who don't know, Berserker is written by Matt Kindt and Keanu Reeves. Yes, Keanu Reeves, as in the very, very famous actor Keanu Reeves, where they wrote a story that is very, very much in line to like sort of John Wick meets a superhero that they're calling Berserker. And Keanu Reeves' likeness is actually going to be the main character in the comic book, sort of like how Samuel L. Jackson's likeness has become Nick Fury. Well, Keanu Reeves is doing sort of the same thing here with Berserker. And this is a really, really interesting story as far as it relates to the comic book industry, because it touches on a lot of different touch points within comic book news, which is like, it being a Kickstarter project, it being, an indie publisher thing. They're having, there's so many variants that, are connected to it. So there's a lot of interesting, touch points that this comic book has going for it as it relates to the comic book industry. And I kind of wanted to, kind of go over it with you guys and talk about it and, see how everyone feels about, this comic book called Berserker. But before I get into that, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying my content, love interacting with you guys. Let's keep this conversation going. All right. With that being said, let me show you guys kind of where this all sort of started. And I'm going to pull up the Kickstarter page and just talk a little bit about Berserker, and then, we can kind of go from there. All right. So here is the original Kickstarter page, and this is sort of what they, put out to all the fans. And I think this was posted in December, and that was Berserker by Keanu Reeves, Matt Kindt, and Ron Garney, a graphic novel series about an immortal warrior seeking only one thing: the truth about his blood-soaked existence and how to end it. So this was created by Boom Studios. They did a Kickstarter campaign to launch this thing, and actually Keanu Reeves, he made a video where he talked about the comic book, and it gained obviously a lot of attention, a lot of press, and they were actually able to get 14,571 backers to pledge $1.4 million, as you can see right there, $1.4 million to create this comic book. And this was like last updated in, January. So they kind of went into the comic book. Everyone got really, really excited about this. There was some news and controversy over is it unfair that, a celebrity like Keanu Reeves is promoting this comic book, and, it's suppressing all these other creators. But, I don't really want to get into that, because I personally just don't have any issue with this. I mean, if Keanu Reeves wants to make a comic book, there's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, I mean, I think it's just really, really cool that, you're going to draw eyes to the comic book industry with his celebrity. So I think that that's really, really cool. So this comic book, started as a Kickstarter campaign. They raised all this money, and now it is, going to be fulfilled, their orders on the Kickstarter. But also, this comic book is actually going to come out into retail stores as well later this month on February 24th, I believe that is. So it's really, really interesting that this is going to hit the stores, and there's so much excitement about this. And, I kind of want to go over this Bleeding Cool article with you guys, because Berserker actually at this point now is one of, already having, not even been on the shelves, is actually breaking all the records for sales with regards to, new comic books within recent years. And so let's pull up this Bleeding Cool article here, and I'll show you guys. Keanu Reeves' Berserker #1 sells over 615,000 copies to comic stores. So I'll read this article here. It's by Rich Johnston. We've been talking about Keanu Reeves' Berserker comic book with co-writer Matt Kindt and artist Ron Garney for some time, and predicting that it would be not only publisher Boom Studios' biggest series ever, but one of the biggest series in recent years. Now that the dust has settled from FOC, not only were we correct about all of the above, but Berserker #1 is much, much bigger than anyone might have predicted. In fact, it hasn't just outsold last year's mega hit Crossover, it did so by more than 4 times. Perhaps the personal message from The One telling fans how to pre-order Berserker may have sent orders into the stratosphere. Maybe the one signed 1 in 1,000 variant, could it be all those exclusive retail covers, or maybe the only review published by anyone so far on Bleeding Cool. The main cover by Raphael Grandpa alone outsold not only the previous record-holding creator-owned Boom series, We Only Find Them When They're Dead by Al Ewing, but the company's best-selling title of all time, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1, which outsold every comic book. After FOC, Berserker #1 has outsold 2019's biggest books, including Todd McFarlane's Spawn 300 and 301, the X-Men House of X, Powers of X by Jonathan Hickman, and even The Deceased by Boom's own Tom Taylor. So, already, just to piggyback off of what was written right there, we have this comic book and it's already breaking all the sales records for, these big hits with these big players, Jonathan Hickman and Donny Cates. So like already, Keanu Reeves' written comic book is selling more than, effectively, the hottest writers in the industry and blowing it totally out of the water. But let's continue on here with the article. All right, so as we understand it, the final orders of Berserker have come in at over 615,000 copies, which means you'd have to go back 5 years to 2015 to find any comic from any publisher that outsold Berserker #1. And that publisher would be Marvel Comics with their relaunch of Star Wars #1, where they sold 1 million copies. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, that's not since 2015 has a comic book sold this much. The sales number include had a thing with Loot Crate, yada, yada, yada. On the creator's own side of the business, you'd have to go back nearly 30 years to the days of Image when founders, in those early 90s of Image, when Jim Lee sold Wildcats #1 for $1 million. So this is really, really cool because this is like, not only is this like unprecedented sales with regards to, massive publishers like Marvel and DC, but this is now, not setting records, but it's like, in that same wheelhouse of like, what Image was going through in the early 90s when Jim Lee had Wildcats and he sold 1 million copies of it. So this is, really new territory for a comic book and the comic book industry, because we have not seen sales and excitement for a book like this in many, many years. And for a lot of people out there who always talk about, oh, the comic book industry is dying, sales are always going down. This is, showing you that there is a way to do so, especially since, there's so much excitement with it being, an A-list celebrity who is writing this book. So really, really interesting, totally unprecedented, but let's finish this article here and wrap it up. All right, there's no doubt that Berserker #1 will be the book of the month, potentially the top-selling book of 2021, even before reorders and almost inevitable second prints are made available. And assume Diamond releases monthly market shares in 2001, it's possible Boom will find themselves the second or third published through Diamond in February, behind Marvel and maybe Image Comics. But the more interesting question is, what will Berserker, when stacked on top of the must-reads, once in features, Something's Killing Children, etc., do for Boom's ongoing marketing share? For the last 6 months, based on point-of-sale data from Comic Hub, Boom has maintained a solid number 4 position at about half the market share of Image. Might Berserker be the beginning of the dawn for the big four now? So again, this is really interesting, and this is kind of where I want to take over the video and talk about what are all the interesting things going on with this book. Because with the pre-sales going on right now with Berserker, I mean, this is setting up Boom Studios to, as far as like sales in the year, this might catapult them above, companies like Image, maybe even companies like DC. I mean, with everything going on with DC and all sort of like the turmoil that company is going through, you could see that this one comic book could catapult Boom into like that new sort of stratosphere where it's like it is solidified in the top 4. And also to Image, Image is obviously the number 3. Everybody knows about Image, but this might be the book that really launches them above that. And this is something that's really interesting because as far as, the first topic that I wanted to dig in here with Berserker is, how do we feel about the celebrity writing this book and it being a Kickstarter as it launches into retail stores? I mean, I think that there's a couple different things that we can talk about, and I'm certainly, have my own opinion about it, but, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, as I talk about it. But basically, I think it's cool that we have a celebrity coming in to write a comic book and to do a launch and put their likeness in it. I mean, I think that that's cool. There's, comic books are an amazing form of entertainment. And I think that's awesome that you have other artists coming into this world and playing in the space and generating excitement. I think overall that's only good for the entire comic book industry to have, new eyeballs who are fans of Keanu Reeves or fans of Hollywood to look at comic books and think of them as a more interesting medium. Additionally, what I think we can all sort of see here is that, for someone like Keanu Reeves, I mean, I don't know, but I would just assume that this is an idea that, for him, he wants to see it in a comic book, and comic books are great, but also for him, this is probably an interesting territory to pitch potential movie ideas, later on down the line. It's like it's sort of reverse engineering. I mean, for a long time now, there's, comic books have been sort of a place where people have, pulled the properties to Hollywood. I mean, we all know that. We all know that drives the spec market. But here we see Keanu Reeves, like, I feel like he is genuinely like, hey, let me make a comic book as effectively a pitch for, a movie idea I have or a TV show idea I have. And, we'll just show tonally what it'll be like. And we'll also be able to create, a property, since we're already going to like put this work into it, let's actually just make something that could, people could enjoy, and then maybe it'll be made into a movie. And that's really, really interesting. And ultimately, I know that there's probably a lot of people out there that are, sick of this whole, spec market and Hollywood and movies, and every comic book now is sort of written into a movie. And I do understand that is a little bit annoying, because there are certain comic books that even when I read them, I'm like, wow, this is so obviously written just to be a movie. And that can have, cons with it for sure. That can definitely, take me out of it when I'm sort of reading a comic book, because I think that, if you're writing it to be a TV show later on down the line, you're not utilizing the best ways of telling story within the comic book space. You're just writing a TV show. You're just doing a storyboard assembly for a TV show. So, that can be a problem. But, for Berserker, let's sort of see how it comes. I'm definitely going to get the book. I'm definitely going to read it. I'm super, super excited about it. And I think from what I can tell so far, it really is leaning into like the graphic novel space, and really, really, utilizing the art and the storytelling within the comic book space. So that's really, really cool. And, I don't think ultimately it's a bad thing if this becomes, a movie property later on down the line. I just think that adds a lot of actually credibility to the comic book space. Additionally, it being a Kickstarter thing, I think that's really interesting. And this might open up the floodgates, for years to come now, where I could imagine Hollywood doing Kickstarter for almost all their properties now. And that might end up being a bad thing, but I could see them doing that. If they want to launch these massive franchises, they can do a comic book run with a Kickstarter, and then that can be the, show Bible essentially for them to make the movie or the property later on down the line. And then that affects like, the comic book spec market as well, which is really interesting, because as I transition to sort of the next topic of this video, I definitely want to talk about, what is the, the outlook for Berserker here with regards to, the spec market. Because, here we are, we're 3 weeks away from this comic book being released. And I'm here to tell you right now, like, if you have any interest in this book, you should probably start figuring out how you're going to get your hands on this when it comes out on February 24th. You either need to start a pull list for the first time with your comic book store, or maybe call them ahead of time and ask if you can put a Berserker copy aside, or you need to be there on the dot, right when the doors open, just so you can grab one off the shelf, because this is definitely going to be a book that just absolutely explodes and clears the shelves. Or I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe there are so many copies that are ordered that this is going to be like this year's rendition of X-Men #1, where you're going to see these in dollar bins forever because there's just so many copies. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that probably a Spawn #1 is where this is going to end up. Within the comic book collecting community. But you never know. I mean, this could absolutely blow up into, the next Walking Dead if this property takes off in the way that, it seems like it would take off. I mean, Keanu Reeves, if he wants to make this into a movie, he just snaps his fingers and this is going to be a movie just like that. So super, super, super interesting. All right. Last thing I want to talk about here with regards to this comic book and what's everything going on in it, is the variant aspect to it. And this is something that is super, super interesting, and it's definitely a touch point with, everyone within the comic book space. I mean, we all have our opinions on this, but this specific comic book has 36 different variants, 36 different variants. I mean, think of how crazy that is. I can't even, I tried to read and look at it and try to understand like what's going on with all the variants. I can't even really tell which one's which. And like, maybe there's Kickstarter exclusive variants. I don't even know. Or maybe there's retail store exclusive variants. There is one variant that is a 1 in 1,000 that is apparently signed by Keanu Reeves. I mean, definitely speaking as far as like value and spec, that to me seems very obviously that it's going to be the one that is going to be the most expensive right out the gate. You're going to see those being flipped on eBay, immediately on February 24th, if not February 23rd. I'm sure stores are just going to list their the signed copy of Keanu Reeves. And hey, it is what it is. It's just like the nature of the market right now. And I don't think that any normal person like you or me who just wants to pick up this book has any chance of getting their hands on the signed copy of the Keanu Reeves Berserker book, unless you can negotiate with your store, you have an in, or you have a contact, or you're willing to pay top dollar for it. But before I continue to talk about this, let's get back right in here to this variant issue, which is cover watch. Every retail exclusive variant for Keanu Reeves Berserker. And as you can see here, there are 36 different covers. I mean, look at this. This is crazy to me. And I don't know how this is going to, manifest. I mean, these might be covers that are exclusive to the Kickstarter campaign, or there might be covers that are exclusive to stores. It's really interesting, and it's going to be hard to figure out what are the quote unquote the winning covers going to be, because this is like a new age that we're diving into, where it's not so much owning like the first appearance book anymore. With all these new variant covers now, they've been able to manufacture scarcity essentially with variant covers. I mean, there's going to be ones that are, we have 600,000 copies out there, but there's only going to be like 1,000 of this variant cover, and just by that just by the nature of that being so scarce, that's going to be the one that actually holds value. I mean, you sort of see this now with like when you look at older Silver Age books, Mark Jewelers or newsstands, things like that. Like anything that can separate a comic book or presume that the comic book has more scarcity is going to be the one that sort of wins out, quote unquote, wins out with regards to like the monetary value of it later on down the line, because people want to feel unique. People want to have exclusive, things. People want to have scarce things. I'm not sweating it. I've never been someone who cared about variant covers. I actually prefer like the normal cover, but that's just me. So anyways, it's really, really interesting that there's going to be 36 here. And just to quickly flip through, because I think it's interesting, you see you have one here. You have a lot of, what do you call it? Like the naked covers, where it's like they have no title on it. So you have a lot of these types of covers. You have like this one that's, black and white with some color palette. Here you have another one that's naked color with a DSAT. You have some interesting ones here, interesting one here. And this is kind of crazy because like, take this cover here, right? For instance, where he has like a sword and everything like that. Nobody knows which cover is going to be the like most popular cover, but if this in fact ever gets made into, say, like a TV show of some kind, or something like that, like and it becomes that like, oh yeah, the Berserker character, like he always uses his sword, this will be the winning cover. Like 100%, this will be the winning cover, because like whatever the movie property or TV show ends up being, or however it handles the property, that's going to be the one that affects pop culture, and that's going to be the one that ultimately drives the marketplace. All right, so quickly flip through. You guys can like look this up here. I can put a link in the description so you can see all the variant covers, but needless to say, there are so many different ones, and you will be able to find one that you really like for sure. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Berserker is coming out. I'm super excited about this. I'm definitely going to pick it up. I'm a huge fan of Keanu Reeves. This one looks like it's going to be John Wick meets superhero meets super gory, kick ass and take names comic book. So I'm definitely going to give the first book a try. I'll be there, at 10 a.m. on the dot on Wednesday at my LCS, making sure I got my hands on this copy. Tell me, what are your guys' plans? Have you guys pre-ordered this book? Do you guys have a pull list? What do you think? Is this going to be something that like, there's going to be lines out the door waiting for this comic book? Or do you think that there's going to be massive shelves of extra copies because there's been so many orders and there's just not that many buyers for this comic book? Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.